So now we get to go into the exciting part of this podcast because, when I do these podcasts, I try to really spend a little bit of the time understanding what people are all from, where they came from, how they got there. And the second part, is really focused on why. I think that yours radiates, and you've always had a very original or authentic way of communicating. The beauty I've always felt with you is I've always understood where I stand, whether good or bad, right? And I just want to know exactly where I stand. I don't want to have to guess at that stuff. I think that that's the most respectful thing you could do for someone.
Yeah.
I think the most disrespectful thing you could do for people is, we were talking about this here, is when you ignore them. People want to help you and you ignore them. There's no greater way to make them disenchanted, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you learn that as a leader. But at some point, the party ends for all of us when we're on active duty. And it's sometimes you don't even realize how good it is until you get out of that. And you're like, I know when I got out of the military, I was pretty convicted in what I was doing. I joined with a very specific purpose. And when I make a promise to myself, I have one of these stupid things about me that I'm just going to be relentlessly locked on that bone until I fulfill it, know? So I was like, I can't deviate from anything until I finish this next milestone, which is I promised myself I'd finish school, finish college. When I went in and I enlisted, I'd come out. And until that happened, like nothing else really mattered. But in that time, I was going back to school and I realized, man, I really missed being active duty. Did you get out of the military and miss it at all? Or were you like, thank Jesus that chapter is behind me. I fulfilled it. I don't miss anything. I left it on the field and I'm ready to move on.
You know what? I missed being at sea.
Did you really?
I did.
It must be all that great food.
Yeah, it was all the great food. I will tell you though, like I would be on the mid watches. And if you were on that that midnight to 5 a.m. shift, you knew when the mess cooks were firing up everything, and then you would smell the cinnamon rolls and you would smell the baked bread up on the bridge, and it'd be like 4 a.m, and there would be lots of times where they would call up over the squawk box and they'd be like, is Nav on the bridge? Is she on the watch? They're like, yeah, she's up here. And they would bring up a tray of cinnamon rolls. They'd bring up a pot of coffee. And those were the things I missed. Just that close feeling of like family, right? And just
strong team.
We all got to know each other, and you could be out in the middle of the ocean and there was nothing to see but water and sky. And it was so quiet, and it was amazing.
I would love to know what that experience is like to be on your bridge at night on like a really nice full moon and a calm sea. Cause I got to do that on a submarine. Like we'd get cigars and people would get up on the flying bridge on the submarine. We'd be out in the NBOAs, the Narragansett Bay operating areas. Mm-hmm. And, it was beautiful because we'd position ourselves. Back then, the Concorde would still fly.
Okay.
So if you were sitting at the right place at the right time and you knew the flight patterns, well, you would hear it for sure. You'd feel it. You would hear the sonic boom, as they would kick into gear. And but we would sit out there and we would shoot, water slugs, and we'd go active on sonar sometimes just to kind of training, and but it's calm seas, beautiful sun. You could see Venus, and you've had those evenings at the sea.
Oh my gosh, so many stars.
Yeah, the stars are. When you have zero noise pollution or light pollution at sea like that, it is amazing how beautiful the ocean can be, right?
Yeah.
And I've got to experience that, a lot of people don't, but those are the things that you miss when you get out. Did you miss, it sounds like you missed the same things.
Yeah.
Were you pretty gung-ho and charged up, and like, what did you do? And when you got out, did you have something lined up? That's where all the anxiety is. So like...
Well, when I rotated to shore duty, you can pick different...
So you finished on shore duty?
I finished on shore duty.
That's really convenient, actually.
Yeah, and that was intentional too, because there was a billet that I wanted, and it was over at in Little Creek, Little Creek. It was NLTU, Naval Training Unit, Naval Leadership Training Unit, and basically you could go there and be an instructor and leader in leadership to all of the new junior officers
that haven't hit the fleet yet?
That have not hit the fleet yet, coming out of ROTC programs, OCS programs, alternate sources, not academy. The academy folks did not run through that. And it was it's a 2-week course. So probably 10,000 people came through in the two and a half years that I was doing it. I just wanted to give back. I just wanted to really talk to them about the essence of leadership in the fleet. Certainly there was a set curriculum, but I wanted to be part of that conversation with the new folks going out to the fleet.
You got to emphasize how important it is personally.
Yeah. And so I loved that. So
So you got to do that for 2 years?
A little over 2 years. Yeah, almost 2.5.
Now, at the same time, are you married by then?
No.
Okay.
No, we were not. We got married right after we separated from the Navy.
Got you. Okay. So when you got out though, did you have a plan like, hey, I'm going back to New York, or I already have a job? I mean, now we're shifting from we started with how you got to where you're at. And I'm always fascinated on people's military backgrounds first.
Yeah.
So, I feel like that was the foundation that you built. And that's a really impressive foundation for those that got to listen. I mean, you were challenging the status quo the whole way through. It was like, it sounds almost like a little bit of a David versus Goliath model in terms of how you even got there in the first place. And I think that's the part that inspires a lot of people, right? Is I want people that are outliers to be listening to this at the fleet. And they could be an E4, E5, they could be a yeoman, they could be an ET, they could be anything. And be like, all I have to do is do a good job of representing myself. And you represented yourself every day, which that consistently paid off. And as a junior sailor of the quarter, which allowed you to be a competitor for junior sailor of the year, which put you into the running for until you get to the fleet. There was a guy on my submarine that ended up becoming, he junior sailor of the base, and then he went down to Norfolk and started competing against all those. And that's awesome. I love that we have that type of rating and that type of, competition, healthy competition. But at what point did you start figuring out what the next chapter is going to be? You have this massive leadership background between being a Mustang as an enlisted and an officer. So you have hands and crafts, skills, and then you have leadership skills and soft skills as communications. And then you have a pretty advanced degree, So now when you get into the civilian fleet, or as you start looking at the civilian fleet, I mean, were you heavily recruited? You're a Navy Academy grad. I'm sure that there's a mafia that goes with that. I mean, the academies have their own circles they run into, right? In addition to being a naval officer, an academy of any branch has its own little mafia side to it, right? So did you feel pretty confident cutting out, knowing that you had enough network, or did you have I didn't care,
No, I actually remember having a lot of anxiety.
Yep.
So
that's where it starts.
My then fiance, now husband, Mike, our tours were lining up so that we could separate at the same time. And we decided to do that. We decided to get married because, we dated for nearly 5 years. When he left our first ship, we stayed in touch and we found out we got along really great. We actually liked each other when we weren't working together, right? And so we did start dating and all of that. But we decided, as part of that, we did a lot of separation. He would go out for 6 or 7 months and come back. I would go out for 6 or 7 or 8 months and come back. And we were just like, well, that's part of what we don't want for ourselves anymore. And then we started looking at what does the next steps look for us when we both leave shore duty and go back to sea. What does that landscape look like for us? And we just didn't see the opportunities that we had previously in the earlier years been aspiring to.
It would have been untenable to have a healthy relationship and still be
and the opportunities were fewer now. There was, they were starting to consider sea duty squadron billets, that supported the fleet. And we were like, well, that's not what we want, so there was lots of things that went into it. And I mentioned earlier, and it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek mention, but he would golf with our captain, our first captain. Well, my husband was an amazing golfer. He still is. And so he really wanted to get on the PGA Tour.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. He's that kind of golfer. And he was back in the day, in the 20s, 30s,
Sure.
That sort of thing. And so we said, well, why don't we just, when we get out, we'll move to Florida so you can golf year round, play the mini tours, qualify and get on the PGA. I'll get a job and I will get a job. And so, there's the Service Academy career conferences. There's executive headhunters that recruit just from the academies, kids, young officers transitioning out. So I had there was lots of opportunities, to network and reach out and get put in front of companies. And I remember interviewing with Pepsi. I remember interviewing with Cisco. And I interviewed with Turner Construction.
Of course.
And that went really, really well. And they took me out to a job site and they showed me the team, the team where it actually happened to be a stadium project for the University of Miami that they were building. And they were like, we need a new assistant engineer down here. We would teach you everything. And And that's when I was telling you earlier about Danny von Kozovsky, he was the vice president of operations. And he asked me why I thought that they recruited military people who knew nothing about construction. And I said, I didn't know. And he was like, well, it's because you bring leadership and management and resiliency and life skills and you're adaptable. He says, I don't know how to train that, but I can teach you how to build.
I can tell you that, I've had the pleasure in the last few weeks of sitting down with their CEO and talking to other members of their executive team. They still do a lot for military, right? And I think that you would still find that same message permeating throughout their leadership, that they want to offer people transitioning out of the military an opportunity to be significant again. And I do think those projects that they were willing to put you on were significant.
I ended up on that project.
What was it again?
It was the University of Miami. It was their basketball arena, their stadium.
Was it cool? So you ended up going to Turner.
I did. I went right out of the Navy. I hired on and I became an engineer for Turner.
No kidding.
Yeah.
How was it?
It was awesome.
How long were you there for?
I was at Turner for 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah. Which is really, if that's your first job out of the military and you were able to last 3, 4 years, that's record stuff, right?
And the only reason I left Turner was because Mike and I, we found out we were pregnant with twins. And my one salary working for Turner was not going to cut it in Florida where we were living, right, in Miami. Because we moved to Miami and we didn't have any support network down there. We didn't have any family. We didn't really have any friends. He was doing his golf thing. I was just working in construction. And then we became pregnant with twins. And so the twins were born. And the first year that they were with us after they were born, 3 hurricanes triangulated within a few miles of this tiny little townhouse we lived in. And we said, you know what? We might want to move back north, get closer to family and friends, get out of Hurricane Alley, sort of thing. And when of course, when the twins were coming, we looked at each other one day and he was like, I probably need to hang up the clubs and get a job, don't I? And I was like, well, maybe at least temporarily, And so he did. But we moved back north.
I got you. Is that where he's from, Virginia, or is that just where you both?
He's from Maryland, actually. Okay. He grew up just south of Baltimore.
No kidding.
Yeah, not far from Annapolis, actually.
I was like, He
went home on the weekends when he was at Annapolis. His parents would come pick him up. Yeah.
That's great. My son gets to do that too. I have a house in James Island and Charleston, so he and all of his buddies at the Citadel get to kind of bust out every now and then. Yeah. And that's got to be an advantage, to not hanging out on posts and getting hazed by the upperclassmen all the time.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty awesome. So I didn't realize that your first career, I'll tell you this, my first construction project in this industry that was data center related was Turner.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot. I think that they have a very mature, very sophisticated outfit.
They treated me really well. Yeah. They gave me lots of opportunities and even coming back off maternity leave, because I was out on a job site, I worked a full day on Friday, went into labor on a Saturday, right? Oof. But you have 9 months to plan for it, right? Everybody knows, all right, we've got 9 months to figure out who her backfill is going to be for, 2-3 months. And but when I was coming, it was Danny V, the vice president, who called me. And I had a few weeks before I had to come back to work. And he's like, how you doing? And we talked for a few minutes. And what was really great was he was like, think it over, give me a call back. He was like, I got 3 opportunities for you. I can put you right back out on some job sites. We got a couple of hotel projects down at the beach. He says, or if you want some more stable hours for the first year or so, if that suits you better with the twins, you can go into estimating and procurement for, a year or 2. It's your call, your choice.
Yeah.
That was phenomenal, right? To just feel that level of support, right?
Yeah.
To be a new mom, but I still want my career to be going well, and to have an employer who understands that and they give me options.
So let me tell you what makes I think what makes a good leader in general is someone, you have to be competitive if you're going to be a leader. You have to compete. If you're going to be a great leader, you're going to learn that you only compete against yourself. And when you find a strong enough leader, they're going to get to the point where, I also think to be a great leader, you only compete against yourself. And one of the things you'll compete on is how far into the long game you could play on people.
Yeah.
It sounds like Danny was playing the long game where he knew like, hey, we're going to go up and down with you. We're in this journey together type of thing. And I think that's the biggest mistake I've ever made. If people, I get asked all the time, like some of the mistakes you've made in the first 4.5 years, I'm like, oh, I don't even know where to begin. Right. But I think the biggest mistake I made was playing the long game on people. You need to invest into your people due to the circumstances of their life, right? Which if they're going through Getting married is a life-changing event. Having kids obviously is a life-changing event. Deaths in the family. But when they go through those, it takes a smart leader is going to adapt to that and find a way to allow you to thrive successfully through those scenarios in which you could still maximize value to the team versus just looking at a team like a machine and saying that component of the machine needs to be replaced. Right. And I think that's those really sophisticated companies like Turner and Holder, they have a lot of ethics. They have a lot of things that they do in the beginning of their projects, at the beginning of their team building, where, if they're hiring 1,000, Turner probably hires 1,000 people a year. That's how big Turner is, in the billions, and probably got 12,000 employees for all I know. I don't know. But they're monsters, right? And they have very sophisticated and mature training and delivery programs. And they build a community for veterans. I don't know what it was like when you were there, but I was talking to them recently, and they have communities for their veteran employees.
That's amazing.
Which is
great.
Really, well, considering that 80% of corporate America has no veteran community training platform or program within their companies. There's nothing that's like, hey, we get that a lot of you are coming out that if you're former military in the last few years, you've probably been combat tested or PTSD exposed, or let's put together something to where you have your own community within the company, right? And those things make a huge difference, not just to culture, but to the bottom line, because statistics have proven that the safer that an employee feels, the higher their output and productivity, which happens to be very economically efficient to a business, right? So it hits the bottom line.
It does.
So I do think that I really admire that about both those companies, Turner and Holder, for really investing heavy into understanding how to create a subculture or a paramilitary culture for their people. But the fact that you're telling me that this person was like, hey, listen, man, you're going through life. It's cool. Let's figure out how many other businesses. It's not because their people at those companies are bad, but so many companies aren't mature enough to know to play the long game on people. So they're not going to invest into repurposing or retraining or redeveloping people. They're just going to remove them out.
And oftentimes they don't know how to do it. They know what they're being measured on.
Yeah.
Right? Bottom line, maybe it's safety, quality. They don't know how to also flex and support and bring people up or meet them where they're at and still meet these measurable objectives they have to meet. That they're being, they don't know how to do that yet. I think in a lot of cases it is a maturity thing. They haven't solved it yet, and they're not sure how to.
The beauty about those companies is they're big enough too that they could hire a dedicated resource for those social dynamics and be like, hey, don't let this impact culture, right? And I feel like they probably invest pretty heavy. So you went and you worked for a few years at Turner, which is a great company. And then did you do any data centers? Were you with them, or were you building? Seems like
no. I did the basketball arena stadium project. And then I was on schools projects. We had a big, for Miami-Dade County, we renovated like 25, 27 schools. And I was just one of the lead project engineers supporting like a fleet of superintendents who were just at each of these schools. And it could be an elementary school where they were just retrofitting some bathrooms. It could be a major overhaul on a big high school. It was the whole gamut, but it was a huge contract that lasted, a couple of years.
Let me ask you this. Were there any Tammys that were in the market that you were able to find, people that were veterans, military veterans perhaps, or people that, did you find like you had mentors in the military, active duty captains or ensigns that were always blocking and tackling or looking out for you? Did you feel like you had that as a civilian, where there were other people now that you're in the civilian fleet and they're like, hey, Tammy, have you ever thought about this? Or like, does that make sense? I mean, did you feel like you were still getting supported in your growth as a civilian as much as you were in the military?
It was different. I don't know if I could say as much or less. It was a different form of support. It was I don't think it was as close and personal where they had as much. It's hard to articulate, but it was just different. I think the mentors were there, but it was more from a business sense, I guess.
Sure.
But they were definitely there in terms of development and growth and what do you want to do next? What's appealing to you? Those sorts of things. Those conversations were always happening. But if I was wanting to talk to somebody and relate to them on a military level, like a veteran level, There weren't too many folks. At Turner, there was another woman who was there. Her name was Kelly, but she was in business development. That was the track she wanted to take. And we to this day we stay in touch and everything. Nice. And we were moving along in our different crew. I was out in operations out in the field. She was in business development marketing. And we kept in touch, and we would get together and stuff because there was just a lot of commonality. She was actually civil engineering corps.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that was great. Didn't have any senior veterans at Turner, if that's what you're asking for, or any of the general contracting companies.
I'm just wondering who picked up I know in the military, like I was lucky. I don't know why, but I always had people that were either senior NCOs or JOs that cared about me.
Yeah.
Right. And I was a great sailor. I wasn't a good sailor. Like I came back, I was brought back by the shore patrol a few times, type of thing, right? So I was not that guy that was like, be more like him. I mean, maybe if I was on watch, I'd be like, try to follow his direction. But if I was on, like I remember talking to one of the best officers in the Navy I've ever worked for is a guy named Mason Ward. And now we talk, but then we were not friends. He was our DCA for a while, but he is savant smart, went to UT, prior enlisted, was an instructor at Power School as enlisted before he took a commission after graduating UT and then going back to the fleet. And I knew him only because he was one of the best officers on the ship. So when we were getting inspected, he and I were on watch together. So you understood that guy drove a tight ship. He had a profound impact on me and didn't even know it, right? Just based on his presence. Now when I get to talk to him, I'm like, hey, one time I was like, what was it like? You guys are in the wardroom and all of us dopey sailors or JO, we're just coming back as junior sailors getting, I think that sometimes I almost felt like they lived vicariously through us because they weren't allowed to get away with the stupid stuff that we were getting away with when we'd pull into Liberty ports. And he goes, you were one of the best sailors we ever had on the ship. Everyone knew that. He goes, you were just the biggest Liberty risk we ever had. So we had to assign watch parties to you when you'd go out.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had no idea. But he's like, yeah, but it was worth it, right? Because normally you didn't get in trouble like that bad. You were doing the wrong things, but the right way, right? And I wasn't doing things like, I was having fun. As they just were jealous because they couldn't do what I was doing, I think, so I was getting in trouble for it. But I never really got in trouble. But I always had people looking out for me no matter how much. If I was able to contribute to the readiness of the ship and the mission, they tolerated me showing up hungover to quarters on the pier, the next day or some shit. But this I always had a steady group of people that either liked me or didn't like me that were always caring about my growth and my development. And that was my biggest shock when I got into the civilian fleet where literally, I think if I were to codify it in the simplest of terms, it would be this. No one cares. Does that make sense? Like I came from a community where everyone cared, even if they didn't like you too, because they had a duty and responsibility to grow and develop and train everybody underneath them. To one where
it was always a matter of life and death.
Right.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah. I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say that.
Yep.
But in the civilian world, and that's what I didn't want to say before about like mentors or finding that support network in the civilian world, that was not as easy. And it was a little bit more transactional. It was always in the best interest of the business that they did it. And so there was something missing there, right? And it was okay.
Legitimate, authentic concern.
Yeah, that personal touch that I was mentioning. It was not there.
So I'm going to put a pin in that because we're going to come back to why I asked that question later. But so you go from Turner, you got the kids, and you decided you want to be back to your support group. You guys moved back up to Virginia, and then did you take you're still in the construction game?
I am. Yeah. Then I went to Hensel Phelps Construction,
another huge shop, very well known, very well respected. And then how long were you there for?
10 years.
So you're just getting started then.
And I started over as well. I went into estimating with them, procurement, because the kids were only a year old. And
better
at that time. At that time it was. But then I was like, you know what? I'd like to get back out to the field. I'd like to be out on the job site. So I went back out on the job sites. But Hensel Phelps, because they self-perform and build so much of what they do, they were like, well, you don't just go in mid-level. You're going to go out there as a field engineer. So it was literally that I went out and bought myself a tool belt and tools and
some work boots.
And I was out there early 30s, right at this stage, mid 30s. And I was running around with some 20 somethings right out of college during survey and layout and, running concrete operations and things like that. And Yeah.
And still dealing with kids.
And I had toddlers that were 2, 3 years old. Yeah. And so, credit to Mike. I mean, he was, because I would have to be at the job sites at 5 or 6 in the morning, sometimes earlier if you're getting an early morning concrete pour in, and the jobs were never close to our house, right? I was always driving long distances. And so I would get up and get out of the house before the kids got up. He would get them to daycare. He'd get them fed, dressed, all of that.
Nice.
And some nights I'd be calling and I'd be like, can you pick them up at daycare? I'm not going to make it.
He's a Navy man. He's modern. He's progressive. That's our job.
He was awesome. He was awesome. Yeah. And it was just great, and that it went that way from, not that it wasn't a strain on him. It was, when we got out, I went into construction. I stayed in construction. When he hung up the clubs, he got a job in government contracting when we moved back to Virginia. And so stable hours, 9 to 5, more suit and tie every day. So he was able to do that. He took on the role of
stable.
He was stable. I went to wherever they told me that. they wherever they told me the job site was. That's where I drove to and did that. Yeah, deployment.
That model makes sense. I kind of look at things that I do in deployment models still. Like my mindset right now. So we have a CP. I've been staying there a lot more than I have the other place because we're going through this big churn. And they're like, "How you doing there?" And I'm like, I just feel like I'm on a deployment, so it's no problem. Like I could hold my breath through deployments, But that's something that we've been conditioned on and trained.
We've been conditioned, right?
But another amazing shop, Hensel Phelps, and then at some point, because I think you worked for like 3 before you were at Balfour. Did you go from Hensel to Balfour?
I did, and I was there for almost 6 years. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, is that where you ran into Nancy and stuff, or?
No, I ran into Nancy at Hensel Phelps.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So she became one of my mentors at Hensel Phelps. She was an ops manager there, and I was just one of the lowly peons, field engineer, project engineers out on job sites. But we crossed paths because I worked on several of her projects that she oversaw.
Sure.
She retired, came out of retirement, went to Balfour Beatty, and then we got talking one day. We just met for coffee one day, and we were just talking with no agenda, just catching up. And she's like, "Well, what are you doing these days?" And I'm like, because I had expressed some dissatisfaction. I was like, ready for a change.
Time for growth. Yeah.
Sometimes you get on the hamster wheel and it just feels like it's Groundhog Day every day, And I was like, it'd be cool to do something different. I got that itch, right? And she was like, well, she goes, "What are you looking for?" And I kind of told her, and she was like, "I think I could offer you at Balfour Beatty." So I ended up going there. I followed her there. And she left shortly after that to go to Compass.
Okay.
Right? Crosby
it's
recruited
all
her.
beginning to add up now.
Yeah. And she was here at Compass for a couple of years. And at Balfour Beatty, I took on a much different role. I was vice president of organizational development. They had grown through acquisition in the U.S. Balfour Beatty is a UK-based company. And what they needed to bring all of these smaller companies they acquired, they needed to unify them under one playbook, one standard set of operating procedures. And because I had come from Turner and Hensel Phelps, I knew what that looked like to be in a national company that operated the same way.
Yeah.
So I had my master's in HRM with a focus in training and development, but I just had experience in organizational development. So they brought me over to do that. And I did it for about 6 years. And then the dissatisfaction started again. I'm like, I can do more. There's something more.
Outgrew it.
I outgrew it, right? That's a good way to say it. I felt like I just started, And, I called Nancy. I was like, "How's it going? You want to talk? I need some career guidance again. I need some career advice." And we got talking, and she did not poach me or anything like that. But I told her what I was looking for. And we were just talking and chatting, and we parted, and, we finished our drinks, and we left. And a few weeks later, she called me up, and she was like, "So what are you making these days?" And that's
the real
what
fun
was.
starts talking.
Yeah, and then we started talking. And then she put me in front of a few people. Crosby was one of them. Did some interviews, and they brought me on board.
Any regrets?
No.
I was like,
no.
I imagine that's got to be hard, because if they had told you we're going to hook a fire hose up to your face and jump billions of dollars of construction projects.
They didn't tell me any of that.
Of course. I'm sure that wasn't part of Chris's stuff.
They told me none of that.
But I've seen, you've been there for a few years now. You said 4, I think.
Going on 4, yeah.
So think about the massive explosive growth. You were not
in Compass years, that's like 28. We measure our years in dog years. Yeah. So 4 years is 28 years.
Yeah. I've learned a lot from, you guys were our first customer, right? And I would say, I'm not even joking when I say this. I feel like we've learned the most of our own painful blind spots of learning and growth, and through our customers. When you fail, your customers will either help you become better or they will punish you forever.
But it's reciprocal, right? We've talked about it. You have shown me, you've put a spotlight on our blind spots as well, where we need to improve too, which is great.
What I think we both strive for is partnerships, right? I just want to be lockstep with you. You're the quarterback. Just let us know how we could help. But if you don't tell us, I feel like I'm just spinning my wheels, right? And then I have a lot of, it's hard to want to help people and not know how. You ever felt like that? And you could have great intent, but if you have poor execution, it doesn't really matter, right? So I think for us, we were growing as a business, and we would learn about those blind spots through you, right? And you could have been an assassin with us, but you were not the mercenary. You were always like a missionary. You were, I think your first default as a leader is to, all right, let's figure out if this is, can we coach through this? Can we use this as an opportunity to train and develop others to be better? Or is this, two in the chest, one in the head, and get rid of that partner and bring in a different one, right? And I've always said, I'm like, hey, look, thank God it's not illegal to be wrong. Thank God it's not illegal to make mistakes. And thank you, like, I don't stand in defense of any of those things. I'm like, did we do that? What did we do again? All right, well, let's figure out why that happened.
Yeah.
But it's inevitable. It's in human nature. I mean, everyone that's on my team is incredibly dynamic, but it turns out they all have very strong, passionate opinions. They all have their own thoughts and ideas. They all have their own emotions and their own emotional ranges. So there's nothing. The only thing that they share is an equal opportunity to do something. Their results are never going to be the same because their efforts are never going to be the same because everyone operates at their own altitude and airspeed, right? So all I have to do is provide opportunity, and then you give us opportunity to get better when we fail, right? And I got to learn a lot about you through those failures that we've had, or where I don't look at them as failures. Actually, I do look at them as failures because I love failing. I've never learned a single thing from anything I've ever done right.
We're all just figuring out what doesn't work.
It's awesome.
That's all we're doing. We're just figuring out what doesn't work.
It's the only place where growth takes place is through fault and failure, right? So, or from, I guess there's some elements of pressure and stress that help, but I don't callous my brain until I do it through failure, right? And you have to. The first thing that no matter what I do, it always seems like the first one I try is always the bloodiest. But if I continuously, or if I have consistency in what I'm trying to do, I've figured that people want to see me successful and they'll help me. They'll coach me through that. Have you found that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's in our human nature to want to give people second chances. We want to help people be successful. I think that there's a lot of reward that comes in building people up versus tearing people down, right? But there's a time where you just you're going to have to rotate hard on people sometimes too. That's just the nature of the game, right? So you seem to have found your Nancy at some point by proxy. Sounds like she almost was a little bit of a mentor from the minute you ran into her.
She was very much a mentor she has been for many years.
And she's a mentor for a lot of people in this industry right now.
She is.
I've never met her.
I consider her the OG. I mean, she's forgotten more about how to build than most people will learn. I mean, there isn't a
She's probably pretty intimidating to be around for that. She's seen a lot of stuff.
She has. Yeah, she has. But she's very willing to share it. She's very willing to help. She's got boundless energy when it comes to things like this. Incredible. So
from taking a page out of her playbook, do you find yourself blocking and tackling for other young women that are merging through this industry that it's just not the same? Your career path and mine won't be the same, not because you were an officer and I was enlisted, or not necessarily even because you're a woman and I'm a man. We started at different places, right? So, but I always felt in this industry like it wasn't as many. There wasn't anybody that was duty bound to do it. It's just I had earned the respect of enough people to where they would lean in and give me coaching when they otherwise didn't have to. And I learned that the only way to tell if people really like you is if they're telling you to not do something, right? If they didn't care, then they would never tell you that. If they do care, then they're going to tell you what to stop doing. Yeah. And they're not, it took me a time to realize that they're not on my back. They have my back. So I have to start listening to those things. When you were emerging, did you find yourself now with a duty to help other people downstream of you, men or women? Yeah. Yeah? I do. And, some people will say, oh, that's Tammy's superpower. I noticed the person in the room who's gotten quiet over the last few weeks. I noticed the person who's struggling quietly. I notice people. I notice differences and changes in them. I notice the people who aren't showing up the way
they were showing up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And those are the people I'm reaching out to. There's a lot of people who reach out to me, and I'm like, of course, let's put something on the calendar every week, every 2 weeks, every month, whatever you want. I make time for those folks. We have a lot of veterans at Compass, to be honest.
Yeah.
And just sometimes the hallway conversations or the quick hitters in the break room. Sometimes they schedule 30 minutes with me. And it's really to just talk about, when that happened and everybody just reacted this way. I don't know if it was because I was going back to my Army days or what, but I felt this. I thought we should have done this. What do you think? And sometimes it's just those conversations, It's like, I'm used to, when this happens, the unit comes together and do this, but what I saw happen was this, and we talk through those things. I experience that a lot.
So what are some of the greatest joys that you've got to learn? I mean, this industry, were you building data centers at Hensel Phelps?
No.
Okay, so
this is my first experience with data centers.
Building data centers. Mm-hmm. And the product that you have codified is very prescriptive, meaning like it's really smart how you put together a product that doesn't need.
Yeah.
Like I think I really admire the most about the product itself is that it doesn't put too much credibility, weight, or value in experience. Because the way we build, I mean, think about how you were building data centers for Compass 4 years ago and how you're building them for them today. And although the fixed form factors may not shift, but the means and methods or the partners or certain elements of what you do for the delivery are going to evolve iteratively as a byproduct of evolution, right? So have you seen dramatic changes, and are you looking for those linear trends, I guess, to understand like where are you going? Like, what are you going to have to continue to do? And like, you're talking to me about one of the new people that you're getting ready to put on your staff. And I'm like, yeah, you probably needed that person 6 months ago. Would have had a huge impact.
Yeah.
On really hard position to staff for. And it's going to take a lot of you. I mean, like you're going to have to redefine your constitution as a leader because now you're really entrusting a proxy to fail for you, right? So now you're doubling your chances of failing, but you're also doubling your chances of success, right? If you find the right person, it's beautiful. And the wrong one, it's brutal, right?
Yeah.
So those changes, like in the things, like walk us through, and I want you to tell us like, hey, since I've been here, I learned about building these data centers. And what I learned was, because I think we make the experience more valuable than what it really is. I think that it doesn't matter if you've been building it for 10 years. I do have a lot of respect for that because it tells me that you've had to figure out how to fight your way through a lot of really creative situations that can involve, supply chain problems, labor problems, age J issues. But it doesn't tell me that you know how to build what we're going to be building next month. It just tells me that you've been creative, you've been put in situations where you've had to fight your way out of it with creativity and grit and make projects, arrive on time or on budget or, safety wise. But I do think like paint for us the picture and let us know what you think you've discovered most in that transition. Cause that's a pretty amazing, you went enlisted, officer, destroyer, turner, which is, and then, I mean, you worked for a couple of the biggest shops in this world, and then you started building for Crosby, who's probably one of the most well-known people in this entire industry globally. Yeah. And I would argue, I mean, and Bilotti was on this podcast with me, a month ago, and he even said, he's like, I think that Crosby may be one of the most underappreciated leaders that have had one of the greatest changes of this industry. And that's not my words; those are his.
Yeah.
He was here 25 years ago, so he would know. Right? Bilotti would know, not me. My thing is there's a whole new generation of us that are coming into the space. I've been here for a bit, and we have a lot of people that we have to cross-train and build. So I like how you take a lot of pressure off of experience and just focus hard on the ability to understand and interpret and execute. Because I think that's where you find success being a partner for Compass, is not trying to give you better ideas or tell you what your product's about, but just try to understand your intent and figure out how to execute to that level or that standard better, right? So for us, that's all we've been trying to do. And I think that it's evolving. I think that what your product is or what you guys are doing, what that team is doing, you're doing some of the biggest programs in the world right now in data centers.
Yeah, we are.
So you have to reinvent the delivery model sometimes while simultaneously not trying to disrupt the delivery model, right? But you have to
We've just simplified it.
That's it.
That's all we've done.
So I think it's probably a good idea to help others understand, because you came into this industry And you didn't have a lot of industry experience when building data centers. And now you're in charge of the entire data center delivery platform for one of the largest data center operators in the world. And I think that's the part in which I really would love for you to let your love light shine on that, because I want my daughter to listen to that and be like, look, if she could do it, I could do it. I want the women, I want Marley on my team. I want all the women on my team. I want all the people on my team to understand that there's no limits as long as you're willing to work your ass off and learn and suffer and endure. Right. Yeah. And I'm not trying to speak for you, but I've had the opportunity to hear you talk about your background more. And I would love for you to, take us full picture around that, because I know that you have a very intentional and deliberate way of doing things. And I think that that's the part that would inspire others too, is to understand what some of those things are so they could pick up where you left off. Right?
Yeah.
So tell us, was it daunting coming in where you're like, what's a data center? Not quite like that, but it's like, it's 4 walls and a roof. Got it. Check. Yeah. So was it intimidating? Was it hard? Was it just took a little bit of time?
So I guess I'll have to back up for a bit. I don't want anybody to think that they hired me to come in and be the head of delivery for Compass. That was not my first job.
Sure.
My first job was to be the head of the Compass program, which was kind of like organizational development, and to develop the Compass playbook, which is what I was doing at Balfour Beatty. That was the translation. But I only did it for 3 or 4 months. And then Crosby called me one day. He was like, I'm looking for a head of delivery. Right now, one person's trying to do that, plus design and engineering and a few other things, and we're growing too fast. He's like, would you throw your hat in the ring for the head of delivery? And he was like, don't answer me. He's like, I see you hesitating. Just tell me tomorrow. Because he didn't want to know, is what he did not want. And so we talked the next day, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll throw my hat in the ring. And so my hat was the only one that was thrown in the ring because I was the only one, I guess he asked or whatever in his infinite wisdom. But what it came down to was the second pivotal point in my life, right? The first one was when Ensign Alton said, hey, you've got something. You should think about the academy. And then the second one was Crosby was like, hey, you've got something. I'd like you to be my head of delivery. And so here I am, right? That's what happened, right? And now to his credit, he had talked to the rest of the executive leadership team, said, hey, this is what I'm thinking. And he got their buy-in first. Of course, that's how he operates. So it was extremely humbling.
That they all bought in.
Yeah, and humbling that I was even considered for it, because my first inclination is going to be to point to other people who could also do it, right? And just keep doing just keep serving in the way I was serving, So I stepped into the role, and one of the stark differences between the way Compass does things and the way the construction industry or maybe even the data center industry does things is that we don't spend time trying to recreate the wheel every single project or campus or something. We have a model, we have a prototype, and we don't have our architects and our engineers and our designers trying to create that new cog, that new wheel every single time. They spend all of their time innovating it, making it more efficient, making it better, making it safer and faster by using advanced construction techniques, by using advanced work packaging. And it's the power of incremental, which is one of our key principles, right? It's just, what's the next 1% that I can improve?
Yeah.
What's the next one? Because you can take a 1% improvement or take one small step or make one small change. And sometimes the small change is pulling it out. Instead of adding a process, you eliminate a process. But if you do it one little bit at a time, it'll stick and you can keep it in place. If you try to make these massive overhaul changes, they rarely succeed. It's too much change for people to handle.
Yeah.
But you can spend all of your effort just focused on that 20%, the Pareto, which is another key principle of that gives you the 80% of the results you want. And so for me in this role, it's a pivot. I use in the GC world, the general contracting world, I spent all of my time out in the field on every single project, figuring out the best way to pour these foundations, which looked a lot like the foundations on the last project I was on, but for some reason, it's a whole new problem. And I'm solving it again. And I'm solving it again on the next project. I'm solving it again on the next project. And that was part of the hamster wheel. Part of it for me is like, there must be a better way. There must be a better way. And so for me here at Compass, it's not about using my energy and the team's energy, and it's not supporting the team to figure out the same problems over and over again. It's about using all of our energies to solve problems one time, so that we don't have that problem again. And then using that creative energy that we have to go figure out the next incremental improvement we're going to make, to be a little bit safer on our job sites, to be a little bit faster on our campuses, to improve the quality just a little bit more for our customers. And that's what's happening. We have this flywheel effect going on. It was slow for the first couple of years. You couldn't really feel or see any tangible results of those incremental efforts in the beginning, but now they're really starting to take hold. And it's this flywheel effect where it's explosive what's happening now, but we're building on this foundation that we're only building one block at a time. Yeah.
I find
if that helps, if that answered.
It does. Yeah. I mean, like I've learned a lot by, like when I said that, like your customers will teach you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
And, we have great ideas, or we think we do. We have a great product. We think we do. We have a great strategy. We think we do, until, like Tyson always said it best, like everyone thought I had a plan until I punched him once in the face. Yeah. Right. And the clients have the ability to remind us and humble us about just how much we don't have it all on lockdown. Right. I've learned so much as a leader from my clients. On the humble leaders that we have that are our clients, I learned twice as much, right? So like I've got to sit front row watching you guys tweak your businesses and watching it. It's not the same company it was when we first started doing work with you 4.5 years ago, right? And that's great because it's forced us to evolve and change and adapt. And it's made the partners around us change and adapt. And it made all the employees. I mean, it's amazing how big of an impact what you are doing to standardize on the manufacturing and delivery of a data center, and how that's having a ripple effect on the entire ecosystem of the industry. So in orbit of Compass right now are $5 to $10 billion worth of customers or partners that are that you rely on from a supply chain perspective, from either equipment or labor or parts or services or something to deliver your product. And that's a lot of people to harmonize, right? And getting us all to sing from the same sheet of music.
But because we've got this manufacturing repeatable approach to it, we can reach out to a lot more people from all walks of life, from different industries, different backgrounds, from the military. Our construction managers, our construction managers, they come from retail, they come from wherever they come from. And it's okay because we've been able to be really prescriptive about what's needed. And it's not about having a 4-year degree or 5 to 7 years of experience. It's not about all of those things that you think you need to type onto a resume. It's about, are you curious and can you learn? Are you disciplined and diligent in your approach? Are you, there's certain soft skills and attributes and qualities that we're looking in people. Going back to the Danny V that hired me at Turner, we're looking for the stuff that is not always teachable.
Yeah.
But you're bringing it to the table, and we'll teach you the rest of it because we've got it we've simplified it, we've made it repeatable and scalable, and as a result, we've created tons of opportunity to.
You open the aperture to who's qualified and capable of supporting you.
Yeah, that's right, and we need people in the industry. It's growing so fast, as you know. There's a huge labor shortage out there, and I think the data center industry is feeling it more keenly than a lot of other industries are. And this approach, our vision is to make lives better, and I think it's to make lives better for our customers wherever they plug in. But it's not to just make lives better for our customers. It's for the people who work with us, who work for us, who support anybody that's related to our data center builds. We want to make their lives better too. And that's part of our vision.
I love it. I mean, I admire how strong your management team is, and I mean, you guys feed each other. I don't know how many books I've gotten from your management team.
We do read a lot.
Yeah, but what do you think I do with them? I go buy 10 copies and hand them out to my own managers, right? And if it's, I'm smart enough to know that I'm not smart enough, so I don't have all the ideas. So I need to be in orbit around people. And there's people at your company. There's a few people there that have had a huge impact on my career, even as recently as, the funny story is my relationship, I've known Adil I've not known Adil, I've only known Adil for a couple of years, but I've known of Adil obviously forever, right? Because he's a huge name in this space. And my first reaction or my first engagement with him, I just didn't do a very good job and we didn't end up on the best of terms. Since then, we've had an incredible relationship, and he's someone I go to very often for just, hey, mind if I bounce an idea off you? And we need those people in I think the industry is pretty good at providing us with people that can provide that senior NCO type of, I could ask any question. And they may laugh at me, but they're laughing at me, not, they're doing it in a way that's the right way. They're not, they're reminding us like, don't take yourself too serious. You have a long way to go. Sure. You're still a student. Like, I think, I was reading Meditations, Marcus Aurelius's book, and in the preface, there was a part where there was a guy that helped contribute to it that was talking about Marcus Aurelius, who at the time, for people that don't know, was one of the greatest Caesars and one of the most influential, powerful men in the world. And he had a servant who followed him around all day. And the only purpose that guy had was to remind him and whisper in his ear every now and then that you're just a man, right? And it's because we can all create egos, especially in this industry. Yeah. The better you get at certain things, the easier it is to get a bigger ego too. And the people that you guys go trucking with have a very humble approach to things. Yeah. I think that's the one thing that I benefited the most, was understanding how important it was to get your management team singing from the same sheet of music. And if you could get it on something that had something to do with the selfless nature of culture, then you have a higher likelihood of people only competing against themselves and not competing with their peers. Sure. And that's what takes a lot of the friction away from the management side, right? Yeah,
the Stoics they're powerful and they're essential. I think I study the Stoics. I study Stoicism. I'm a student of it. It's been a game changer for me in the data center space at Compass. I'll tell you what, 2 years ago, I gave everybody on my team the 3-book set by Ryan Holiday of, it's the obstacle is the way, ego is the enemy, and stillness is the key, right? And every now and then I'll just say, hey, I think you need to go read a few chapters out of Ego is the Enemy, But those books—
You've told me that, actually.
I have not. But, those books are dog-eared and they're highlighted and they're marked by me because I refer to them all the time. They're on my desk, And sometimes you've just got to be a reminder that, hey, people are they're gonna point their finger at you. They're gonna down you. You just accept it. It's okay. Just, what are you gonna do with that now?
Robin's racing. It's part of the game.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it's hugely powerful in helping you develop resilience and just accept that, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be messy. Sometimes it's okay.
What are some of your favorite parts of this whole game, the whole industry, in general, what you get to do? You get to build, the home for AI and all the other cool things that come with it. What are you excited about the most? I mean, what do you love about what you're doing? Anything worth sharing with people that don't even know that they have the option to do that? Something that maybe someone on the fleet right now is like, wait, I'm not an engineer. I'm an ET, or I'm an FT, or I'm a ST.
Oh my gosh, they could join. They could insert themselves into any spot in the industry. We have our global supply chain partners that are in the electrical space, the mechanical space, the power generation space, and they're global. They're providing our equipment on all of our campuses globally. We've our general contractors, the subcontracting trades. They're all regional, they're local, they're everywhere, wherever we go in any country. People from in the fleet. I mean, in any of those rates. I mean, there's opportunities throughout the industry. We're ripe with operating and maintaining the security of the facilities. The operations piece of it. We hire so many veterans through there.
Explain to anybody that's listening right now how diverse your construction management, project management strategy is. You have 2 levels. You have a PM and a senior PM, right?
Yeah.
Now, in those 2 levels, you would think that what you're looking for is, like you said, 5 to 7 years of this with a degree in that, and blah, blah, blah. But what I've learned is there's some value. The reason why I stopped giving a shit about experience a long time ago was I learned a long time ago that experience comes with a lot of bad habits and a lot of baggage. And sometimes
100%.
You're retraining bad habits. Someone else told them that that's the way to do it. So I stopped and I abandoned experience a long time ago. There's certain groups that we deal with where they're 1987 called and wants their strategy back, and they still think they need experience,
That's
right?
True.
So, those guys haven't seen the ball since kickoff anyway. So, we'll probably end up doing work with that company when their replacement shows up, right? Mm-hmm. Then it became talent, right? Hey, how talented is that person? They have this, they have an aptitude for X, and I learned that it's impossible to understand.
How do you define talent?
You don't. So the only thing we look for now is personality. And some people define that as character, but I think the personality part is the part that is, would you all want to hang out with this person even if you weren't working with them? This doesn't mean the answer always has to be yeah, But like, there has to be a likability factor. We have a zero brilliant asshole policy, meaning I don't give a shit if you are the smartest person all the time. You're always right. If you're not nice in the sandbox with everyone else, we just don't want you in the box with us.
Yeah, because it comes at a cost to keep them.
It does.
It costs.
It erodes everything, but it hurts the culture the worst, which has the greatest impact on everything else.
That's right.
So I love your position on that. And if you feel comfortable, share with me and those that are listening, like what does Nirvana look like? If you're a soldier, sailor, airman sitting in Fort Hood up the road to Camp Pendleton in San Diego or Norfolk, Virginia in the Navy base, it does not matter. There's a place for you in this industry. Compass is a great example of that because you're not looking for anybody with data center experience. In fact, you would prefer that they didn't have that really coming in, right?
That's right.
So explain that, because that is what makes every company has an advantage. And, Compass has a lot of various IP-ish type of things that they do. This is something that no one else has adopted yet, but you're going to start seeing the herd mentality follow, which is they're going to realize you have too many people that are working on programs and they're freaked out because the volume and velocity is pending behind them. It's pent up behind them. And they're sitting here going, but I need someone that has this and this and this, because we're getting multiple phone calls every day. Labor and power are the two biggest threats to this industry. Yeah. And all I deal with is labor and power, right? So I get calls every day from groups that probably, maybe I was their last phone call, right? But they still can't find talent. And they'll come to us and be like, well, we want this and this. And I'm like, do you need that? Or do you need someone that's gone through what you went through? And that is, as a DCA or an MPA or an EIEIO, you had a lot of skills that required. What people don't realize is when you're on a battleship or a destroyer or a submarine and you're at sea and something breaks, you fix it. Yeah. You don't pull in and ask for the mechanics to come on board. Like, I hope you brought some books and I hope you brought some extra pieces and parts and some extra tools, because you're not getting back in until you fix your own problems. Yeah. Right. And that is a skill that you can't put on a resume, but brings a lot of value to you. Do you agree?
I do agree. Yeah.
So explain to those that are listening, because I want soldiers, sailors, and airmen that are like, the Shays or the Marleys or the people that I have that are like, okay, so I can go in and be in construction, even though I don't have any construction background. And I think that is where the greatest opportunity this industry has to offer is, who would have ever thought that you could come into this industry from a retail background, working at the Gap or something, and next thing you know, you're not only working in this industry, you're bringing value.
That's right.
And you've figured out how to create a construct in which people could come in and execute from a playbook in which they can contribute value regardless of experience.
Yeah.
So I don't do a very good job speaking for you on that, but I did want to tee it up a little bit in case you wanted to add anything to that, because no one's going to listen to what Kirk says about how many opportunities this industry provides or has to offer as an operator, but they'll listen to you, who's, an EVP for one of the largest data center operators in the world, and you do matter, right? So explain to them so they could hear it from you, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. So where do you want me to start?
What would it have taken for you, either enlisted or as an officer, to have heard about this industry and been like, that sounds interesting, I could have done that. Yeah. Right. So I'm like, you'll hire someone that you're looking for their character, personality traits, and less experience and less talent to figure out how willing they are to reinvent themselves. Yeah. They don't need to have any experience, and you'll put them in offers and opportunities that are really great first places to start from. It's better than where I started from. I started with a service engineering role. It took me years before I became a PM. Yeah. Right. So you are opening up this opportunity all across the country for these people, and tell them what you're looking for.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned it earlier, we're not doing things necessarily better or worse than any of our competitors. We're just doing it differently. And we're staying true to that. We say no to a lot of opportunities out there to do things a certain way. We say no to opportunities that just break our model, break our program. And the reason I share that is because, we're staying very true and focused on what's most important to us, which is to simplify the builds of these data centers so that they're safer and faster. We don't think they're mutually exclusive. So what does that mean for the people that we ask to go build them or to be part of the build in many different capacities? What it means is that, we're figuring out how to provide a very repeatable way to build and we're very prescriptive in what we need people to go do. So one of the things that veterans, for instance, are bringing to the table when we interview them is that they're immediately curious. They're immediately trying to figure out, what is the landscape? What do I need to go solve? What do you need me to go do? Right? And we can give them that. We can say, here's the role. Here's what our expectations are. You can have 0 years of experience. This can be your first pair of work boots and the first hard hat you ever own, right here. And we'll teach you the technicals. What we need is people who can get on board with how we do it, how we think, how we collaborate, how we transparently communicate and share information quickly, how we recognize immediately smoke or fire or problems and get them elevated to the right people right away. It's about, we're looking for those people who can be put, and a lot of people, they say, how hard was it to transition from the Navy into construction? And I'm like, it was so easy. I was like, it's no different than being part of a squadron and then a destroyer, right? Your unit.
Yeah.
You go to a construction company, you've got the regional office, and then you've got a job site, and there's your unit right there. And it's the same on our builds as well. Each of our campuses is a unit. It is a team of people who have a massive project. They have a purpose in front of them. It's a massive campus that we're building with lots of different team players. And we've laid out for them, this is the visibility we need. This is the reporting we need. This is how we're going to measure success on this project. Here's what you're going to learn. You're going to learn how to read drawings. You're going to learn how we sequence the building, and we bring it up out of the ground, and we seal it in, and we stuff it full of mechanical and electrical, and we fire it up, and our customers move in. You know what I mean? We're going to teach them all of that, and they can come with zero to little knowledge or awareness of what a data center even is. It's coming in hungry, humble, and really curious. I want, bring us your curiosity, bring us your desire to just learn something completely new, to be out on a job site, to be meeting new people, to be able to just be in a space where you can ask a million questions a day, and it's completely cool to do it because we want you to learn.
Yeah.
And it's just, we love that. We love bringing people into the industry because we have a program and we have a model where people with little to no experience can come in and they can just learn something new. They can be immersed into an entirely new industry that is just, it's exploding and it's global.
I really don't look at it as an industry anymore. I try to advise people to look at it as another language. It's just another language construct. So it is a different industry, but really it's just a bunch of different words. The concept of project management apply to if I was building a hospital, just like if I was building this. Or
that's fair.
I just look at it. I mean, the reason why, and you've spent time with Carly today, right? She speaks multiple languages.
Mm-hmm. And so she'd be great on a project in Europe
she would.
Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Middle East.
She's good at the holistic, like everyone has a purpose. Her purpose is to build high performing teams, and she loves to use her language skills as an interpreter to figure out not what you're using in the language you're using, like whether it's English or German or Mandarin, Chinese or Pashtun, right? She's trying to figure out, what are you actually telling me? Like, what are you saying?
So she's bringing empathy and intuition to the table.
And then she responds based on what you're truly saying, not what you're telling her with the words, but what you're truly saying.
So she's probably seeing problems sooner.
100%.
She's probably seeing conflict sooner, and she's getting in front of it.
She, not only does she get in front of it, but she's done a pretty good job of isolating me away from all of that so that I could put all the wood behind the arrows that I'm doing, because you saw some drawings for like some of the things that we're doing, and it's an exciting time. This industry is it's an exciting growth phase. But she was nervous as I think it was you she was talking to, but she was like, she thought we were hiring her to check a box. Hey, we need more women. I'm like, that's not it at all.
Oh.
I'm like, I need a leader who could break down and understand what is being said, regardless of what words are being used and what language is being used in.
Yeah.
And that's her gift, is to figure out what's actually being said and what are they trying to tell me. And I think that gift is something that, like, I needed that. I think your chief of staff, when you bring on a chief of staff, will probably help translate your intent into another language almost in some cases, because this industry is just a language. Understanding everything from the ATS to the medium voltage switchgear to the UPS to the PDU to the RPP to the it could seem like this is an intimidating thing, but it really is it doesn't take long. It's like anything else. It's just another language. It's just another lexicon or another group of words that you have to patch together in your toolbox. But if you can find true translators that are high empaths, like you said, non-toxic empathy, but real true empathy that's not going to be like, I mean, if you're an empath, some people are like, that's great. I'm like, well, if you're an empath, that means that you are going to absorb the negative that they have. And if you are going to do that for everybody, then everyone's going to you're going to become the dumping ground for everybody. So you got to be really careful.
Yeah.
And she's really smart. So she's like, hey, I don't have, I'm just telling you that this is what is actually happening. But she was worried that we were first just trying to check a box. And now she realizes how much value she's bringing. She's like, yeah, you guys probably should have hired me about 6 months prior to that. I'm like, I tried for 9 months. But the thing is having the ability to understand this language means everything.
Yeah.
But if you look at it not as an industry, but just look at it as another language.
Yeah.
I think that it's less daunting to just think of it as another language.
And there's a lot of complexity out there. I mean, there's a lot of things in motion, a lot of things changing.
Yes.
Our customers are trying to figure out the impact of AI and what that means for the data center capacity they need. They're trying to figure out all kinds of things. So they're in flux. They're trying to respond to that and regroup and pivot and be smart and focus on the right things. And in turn, us as providers, we're trying to be on the journey with them and to help them solve those problems. And so it all comes down to, I've never mentioned you need 5 to 7 years of experience or a bachelor's degree in something to do all of this. It is just about problem solving and being part of the unit and being able to flex and pivot and adapt and just continue to read the terrain. What's next? What are we picking up on?
I like that.
Where do we go next?
If I were to, you codify it well, right? You have, what you're looking for from a personality, the creativeness, relentlessness. I think the one thing that I'll look for next, because like I said, I stopped hiring for experience or talent and just hire on personality now. I think the thing I'll look for now in that personality part as I scratch the paint is I think I like people that are okay with failing.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to be wrong to be better, right? And some people just hate being wrong. So even when they are wrong, they refuse to admit it, and that's why they don't get better, right? So I have to figure out how to really continue to go down that stack, because you can find great people, but then maybe they're so competitive they just don't like losing. And they think of failure as losing. I'm like, you're actually not if you're beating yourself, So I don't know how to get my mind wrapped around that yet. I'm processing that and trying to figure out how I memorialize that better to my team. But we pay close attention to our customers and figure out what's working. And when we see customers that are struggling, we learn just as much from them too, because we're like, well, don't do that.
Yeah.
Right. You learn just as much from good leaders as you do bad leaders. And some clients are great leaders and some are struggling as they learn, and they don't own the market on that. We all have the right to be wrong sometimes, especially when you're growing. You guys are 13, 14 years old.
We are now, yeah.
It's a very mature, sophisticated company now. And you're optimizing the things that you're doing now, where now it's almost, I'm not saying I wouldn't trivialize it as though you're just figuring out how to efficiently tap the ball as to spin on the tip of your finger. But it's not quite the same as when you were first trying to get that ball to spin on the finger, right?
Yeah.
There's just stages that we all go.
There is, yeah.
And I'm in that trying to get the ball up on the finger still stage. So, well, look, as we get ready to bring this home, I always ask a few questions to people, and I'll start with one with you. So what do you tell people you do for a living?
I tell them I support the teams that are building data centers for Compass.
That's fair. And when they say, what's a data center, what do you tell them?
Oh, geez. I guess it depends on the audience, right?
Yeah.
But basically, I just say, those are the structures you see out there along the highway sometimes, but they're the ones that house all the data on your phone.
Yeah. It's hard. I ask everybody that question.
It's really hard to boil it down to layman's terms.
But we have to. We are we as industry leaders are holding the industry back from becoming more mainstream. Like, we almost have to redefine the construct of this industry to meet the attention of a 7th grader. Like, I always look at grades as an example. I don't ever looked at grades ever. Even with my own kids, I've never looked at grades as an example of intelligence. I've only viewed grades as an example of interest. Like, if your kid is smart, you'll put something in front of them.
It's more of a measure of the teachers, not the students.
Could be that too, right? But like what I've learned is if a kid is genuinely and truly passionate or interested in something, not only do they not need your help to learn it, but you couldn't stop them if you tried.
That's right.
Okay. But if you try to teach them shit they don't care about, and they could have a big fat brain, they'll still get a D or an F in a class that they don't like an engineering, an electrical engineering class, right? So my thing is if they like it, it won't matter. If you like physics, it doesn't matter. If you like science, it don't matter. You're going to figure out a way to get through it. And it's not, it's like this paradigm shift in things, right? So going back to you, when you tell people what you do for a living, help me work on that lexicon so that we can go convince 18 to 24-year-olds either leaving the military or bypassing college altogether or coming out of college that want to come park their talent, their passion, and their careers here. Because right now they just think like, I don't know what a data center is and it sounds too complicated and I'm probably not qualified for it. I'm like, wrong. Everybody's qualified as long as you're creative. I think as long as you don't mind having some grit, maybe a chip on your shoulder, a little bit of a relentless work ethic, never hurt anybody. But most importantly for me, you have to be willing to fail. You have to be okay failing and you have to be okay learning.
Yeah.
And if you have zero experience, you can still come in and bring value to this.
But a lot of people look at the 9,700-ton destroyer or the 400-foot-long submarine or the Army brigade. I'm using bad terms for the Army, but it's just the equipment the planes they fly,
advanced weapons, machines, tech,
all of that. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, how could you ever learn how to operate those, use those, fly in those, drive those? And, those 18 to 24-year-olds that are already doing it and have seen more of the world than any of their friends in college will see, right? They're like, well, it's a no-brainer. I just went to a 6-month school or this or that or the other. And it's like, well, it's probably even easier in the data center space, right? Or, honestly, because there's so many entry points.
Less pressure.
Yeah, less pressure. Well, yeah.
There's pressure, but you don't have an NCO standing over you saying like, if you don't do that, you lose your liberty this weekend. That's
right, for sure. But there's so many entry points. You can come in at that project manager CM level with zero to no experience, like what the model we have at Compass. You could come in with, on the operations and the maintenance and the security side of it, if that's what your MOS was, right? You could come into it if you were an electrician or you were a mechanic or a fire controlman or any of these folks who operated those complex systems in any of the advanced military equipment in any of the branches. They could absolutely transition very easily into the electrical space, the mechanical space, the power generation space, and we're all tied in together, and they all come together for several years. We build out a campus and we go to the next one, and you're part of a unit, you're part of something bigger than yourself, and you just see it being built. And it comes to life. Literally, we energize and those buildings come to life.
And they're amazing. And they serve as a sky for the cloud. Right.
They sure do.
I would say this. I would go so far as to say if you're in the military right now, you're qualified for the data center industry.
100%.
You've already demonstrated that you're curious enough and you're willing to take a big enough risk.
Yeah.
And you're willing to reinvent yourself. If you're in the military, you're qualified to be in this industry and you can bring value. It doesn't even matter.
And the companies that are out here, the general contractors, the electricians, the mechanics, the data center providers,
manufacturers,
the data center providers like us, we are looking for the veterans.
Yeah.
We want to bring them in. Those doors are wide open.
Well, listen, this has been fantastic. I know that I bounce all over the place because I'm genuinely fascinated and I've got to have the opportunity to know you for a while. But is there anything that is there anything that inspires you want to share? Is there any advice you have? I mean, what advice would you have for someone in the fleet? What advice would you have for my son who's a sophomore in college right now, or my son who's a freshman in college right now, and he's not sure if he should be in college? Like, do you have any advice for anybody that you want to share at any age group or any demographic in particular that you feel is worth mentioning that would allow them to maybe reconsider what their future looks like?
Yeah, I would say pay attention to the things that not everybody else is doing and stop listening to what everybody thinks you should be doing. And these are the exact words I've given my son. I have twins. I have a daughter and a son. And my son is somebody I occasionally ask him, I'm like, so why are you studying that in college? Are you going to use that? I don't know, Mom. I'm still figuring it out. And I'm like, there's other ways to figure this out, right? There really is. No, there really is. And it doesn't have to be doing what society started telling us in middle school and elementary school. It's fine to go to college and get a 4-year degree. It absolutely is fine, but it is not for everybody. And
you can still do it in the military.
That's right. So, I mean, I joined the military I went in on my 18th birthday on July 18th. So a few weeks after I graduated high school, and it was the best decision I ever made. Because I had to figure out who I was and what was important to me. I had to figure out what I was made of, and I had to figure out what interested me. And I knew that at that point in time, college wasn't for me. Now, I came back around and I ended up going to college, which was great. But I think anybody could say that. You can go spend some time, go just enter the industry. Go enter the industry. Go play around with it. Go learn something new. And it's what I tell my kids. It's what I've told other younger people, over the years. It's like, pay attention to what keeps drawing your eye. Pay attention to what you keep noticing, because that's where your heart is. That's where intrinsically you're going to be most interested, right? And then just go follow that, and don't worry about what the paycheck's going to be or what this is going to be or that. Just go follow what you're noticing, what you keep getting drawn to. And I think if I look back and I reflect back, I think that's what that's how my life has been navigated so far, is I just kept following where I was drawn or what I noticed, And of course, there was those 2 pivotal moments where I had a leader who noticed something in me. But in between those 2 pivotal moments, I just kept following what I noticed, what I was drawn to, what interested me. And it has taken care of itself. And
just follow your instincts. Trust yourself.
That's right.
Take the risk.
Because sometimes that's not always going to just be college or this path or that path or another path. Sometimes it is, but not always.
No, I love that. Lowell, let me ask you, is there anything else that you feel it's worth mentioning before we shut this one down?
Mm-mm.
No?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Well, listen, I know that I chased you for a long time to be on this. I wasn't trying to guilt you, but I was like, I do think that you'd benefit a lot of people by sharing, the journey that you had to go on to get to where you're at, because it wasn't orthodox. It wasn't cookie cutter. Sounds like it wasn't intentionally or deliberate. You just kind of just kept listening.
It wasn't expected. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that as long as you just kind of keep staying true to yourself and keep doing what you feel is in your highest good, as long as you're being honest with yourself, it's going to work out.
It does.
And just, you're going to have setbacks too along the way. You just got to be able to ride those out, and you're going to have great days. I believe in the rule of 3s, right? One third is shit, 1/3 is good, 1/3 is great, right? Yeah. The only good part about having a shit day is that the next day or the next phase will either be good or great, right? Yeah. So you have to take it for what it is. But I do think that this industry has a lot to offer. I think Compass has a lot to offer the industry in terms of introducing new people to the space. This industry, it does a pretty good job of recruiting and transferring people from one company to the next within the industry, but that's not going to solve the problems that we have. We need to introduce new people, and Compass is a vehicle that allows us to do that. So I really appreciate that. Compass has been a group that has taught me a lot in the time that we've been in business. You personally have helped, push me and challenge me and becoming a better leader, and I appreciate you for that. And I appreciate you taking the time and having the courage to come up and talk, because I know that this is not something that you enjoy doing very much, but I hope that it encourages others to either reach out to you, and hopefully you could leave some of that information on how they could reach you, or they just start leaning in a little bit more and learning a little bit more about the industry. Maybe they follow you on LinkedIn, and then and maybe they could be available to ask you a question on LinkedIn if they direct message you.
I'm always available. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find there, and I'm on the
website,
the leadership page of the Compass Datacenters. I'm easy to get a hold of, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I always respond.
So just do me one quick favor and just maybe rattle off, if you are okay, either what it's Tamara, not
it's Tamara. Tammy. It's Tamara on LinkedIn, Tamara.
And the last name is spelled?
Yang, Yang.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if you don't want to give your email address on this, I don't blame you, but you can if you want people to be able to reach out to you directly. But if you just want them to get you on LinkedIn, that works.
LinkedIn is good. My email is tyang, Tyang, at compassdatacenters.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping that the people that reach out aren't the ones that bother you, but the ones that want to, try to figure out how they could maybe take a page out of your playbook.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll always pick up the phone, or I'll call them right back.
You got it. Well, is there anything else you'd like to leave before we close this out?
No, sir. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, shit, mate. This has been great, because it's not every day I get to sit down with fellow veterans and talk about their journeys to get into this. And that's what the whole beginning of this started from, is the conference itself. I love, it's disruptive. It's once a year and we get to have a lot of fun. But the podcast is what allows me to get to the basis. And that's how I could extend the reach into the soldiers and the sailors and the airmen that are growing with the same level of anxiety that you and I once had as we were staring down the barrel of transition. And I was single. And I didn't have kids, and I didn't have a place to reload back to. But there's a lot of people that are under a lot of pressure to get out of the military, and they're not sure what to park their talents or their careers at. And I hope that they could find this podcast and realize that this industry will be mainstream one day, and you have the opportunity to come in while it's still blue sky.
Yeah. 100%.
Well, Tammy, thank you for all your time. Thank you for your words and your leadership. Thank you for inspiring all of us, and thank you for joining the revolution.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.